Good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Monsters Den. I am Pete Pardo.
I'm Rich Catino playing with the puzzle box. I don't know if I should be. Do I dare?
I think you should.
And today we are talking about the first three. I don't know if you could see the box. First three Hellraiser movies. Can you see that?
There you go. Yep.
With the cool foil cover. So that's the second one, Hellbound. Yep, I got one of those, the 2-in-1.
Yep.
Yep. And then the first one with the puzzle box on the front, which I'm playing with. I must be out of my mind, but it's October, it's Halloween, so why not, right?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, I got the puzzle box. I got the Necronomicon. I think I'm ready.
You're good to go. You're good to go. We got the candles. We got the spooky music. I mean,
right?
All the elements.
I'm all ready to have a sleepless night.
That's right. Pretty cool series. I mean, the Hellraiser franchise started in the late 80s, based on the
87
novella.
Actually.
Yeah. Based on the Clive Barker novella, which pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hellbound Heart, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So good stuff. A franchise Rich and I were just talking before we went on air that we're looking at 10 movies here in this franchise, but the first three by most are considered the best, and those are the three that were released in the theaters. Or was the fourth also released in the theaters? I don't remember.
I think Bloodline might have been in theater.
Okay, that might have been the last.
Might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a pretty good one because that gave you the origin of the box.
Yeah.
If you remember, it took place, I think, in France or something, one of those European countries, and they showed all the underground, Satanism and the cults and all the hellfire and stuff that they would do and debauchery that would go around creating this thing. And the guy that was the craftsman that created the box. It's cool.
Yeah, definitely. But for me, the first two I think are the best. And I think when they came out, these films were kind of like a fresh breath of fresh air, because we had all of these, we had the Halloween series and the Friday the 13th and, Freddy Krueger and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I think these films came from like a different place. I mean, these films were kind of gothic and little bits of sci-fi here, pretty evil.
Yep.
If you think about it.
Yes. It was almost like not a reimagining, but a modern day version of like a Frankenstein or something.
Yeah.
Where you have this lead character that has doesn't speak too much, but they got still personality in what they do with their mannerisms and their expressions and things.
And these
but obviously more.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, I was going to say,
but more horrific too, because he's got nails in his head.
Oh, all the Cenobites, when you think about it, are pretty ingenious creation, and not surprising coming from the mind of Clive Barker, right? But I love the makeup and the costumes and just the tone of these films. And for my money, I don't know how you feel about this, but I love the debut, the first film. I think the second one, which didn't do as well in the theaters, I think the second one is just a tour de force of just creepy ass shit.
It is
nightmare.
But if you watch them, when you watch them though, if you noticed, I revisited them before we did this topic, that Pinhead's barely in the first two. He's in the second one a little more, but he's not in them that much. He appears here and there. He's in and out.
Yeah.
It's more about, like, the first one's more about the relationship with the daughter and the father and her uncle, who I don't want to give away the plot, who's a big part of that story.
Yeah, true.
And his involvement with the box and the Cenobites.
Right.
So there's a lot of that going on, not just Pinhead and the three other Cenobites that show up on screen.
Yeah, because I think they marketed these films from the beginning as Pinhead was like the boogeyman of this franchise. And you're right, it wasn't until like probably the third and fourth films where he's basically the focal piece of these movies, whereas in the first couple Not so much. I mean, I think if you were to go
Yeah,
and like chalk up like the entire screen time that he has in those first two movies, not a hell of a lot.
yeah. No, a little more in the second one I noticed,
Yeah.
and he speaks a little more. He's got more to say, but I love when he speaks more. Like the third one, I revisited that too, and some of his lines and his dialogue that he gives and his philosophies of hell and his purpose for what he does is pretty awesome. That movie alone is his movie. I think the third one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And the tone of these films is really dark and menacing.
Yes.
I like the
Yeah.
fact that there's not really any humor going on here. Like these were pretty
There's
serious
none actually.
movies.
There's
Yeah,
there's no humor.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is good. And great
Yeah.
costumes, great sets. I love in the second film the whole scene where they're in the labyrinth, which
Yes.
I remember going to the theaters and watching that. I was like at the edge of my seat. That was some pretty unnerving stuff, right?
Yep. Yep. And what they did to the doctor in the movie,
Yeah.
who becomes a Cenobite himself.
Yep. Yep.
He got his wish, and I really like the woman. What's her name? The stepmother, the aunt. I mean the stepmother. Julia, was it? Is
I think that was her name. Yeah. Yeah.
that her name? I just watched it again yesterday. I can't think of it. I think it's Julia, and the girl was Kirsty,
Yeah.
and her relationship with her, and how she's just so wicked and evil because she comes back from someplace. I don't want to say where, but her part of that story, that's really her movie, the second one, her coming, back into the story because part one and two and three are actually direct sequels to each other.
Right. Right. Yeah. The continuity worked really well in these films. And, at a time where
Yeah.
we've seen lots of horror films, continuity is non existent sometimes from movie to movie. It was always
Yes.
good in this
Yeah.
franchise, however long you stayed with it, whether you just watched the first couple or watched
Yeah.
all 10. They
Right.
all work pretty well from one to the other. And that's pretty
Yes.
important, I think.
Yeah. And Hellraiser was much different too because the 80s was a lot of slasher movies, a
Yeah.
lot. And they're good. I love a lot of them. I could talk about, a dozen of them that are really good, but you had, the slashers, and then you had a couple of zombie movies, a couple haunting movies and possessions. You had a little bit of everything. The classic monsters didn't even come back in the 80s. If you remember, it was the only time they showed up was in the Monster Squad. Remember that one?
Oh yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a classic. But in the 80s, there was none of the classic monsters. It was all Michael and Freddy and Jason and all those guys. So Pinhead was something different because he came from hell and the Cenobites came from hell, and it created um, the story that went between two worlds, between our world and like the netherworld. And
Yeah.
that you really didn't see in the horror movies either. That was very different too.
Yeah, and that's why I like the second movie so much because it actually took you there for almost like for
Yeah,
the
it takes
first
you
time.
into the labyrinth.
Yeah, yeah, and that made that
Yes.
whole film for me just great. So
Yeah.
so you and I were talking the other day about like kind of like makeup and costumes and stuff, and you've actually had like a lot of work. You've done a lot of work in that area over your life. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I've done a lot of low budget stuff, but it was great. I would still like to do it if I can have some time. I usually do it over the summer when I'm not teaching, when I have the downtime. But the past few years I haven't been able to do it. But yeah, I did maybe a dozen small horror films, some makeups. I do a lot of props and things like that. Like I worked for Madison Scare Garden when it was a haunted house. So it was even before the whole boom with all the haunted attractions.
Right.
So I forgot what year it was, but I met Alice Cooper. He was there with Chris Angel. So that was cool, like for their opening. And then oddly enough, for Hellraiser, when they did the toys, I knew a couple of the guys that were doing the toy line for that at the time, and I was actually working on a little miniature model set of like the room with the chains hanging and the box that spins with all the body parts in and stuff. So
Yeah.
I was actually working on it, finished it up, and it came out really good. And they took the figures and they put them up against it, and they took the photography for the box art with that set.
Wow.
So that was really nice. That was really cool.
Yeah, that must be pretty thrilling. That's cool.
It was, and then they sent me a Pinhead statue that was signed by him. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I always loved the image of Pinhead, and I always thought Doug Bradley did such a great job.
Hmm.
Just very stoic
Yeah.
and just like menacing.
Yes.
You really didn't have to do or say much, right? I mean, that's how effective
No.
the outfit and
Yeah.
the makeup and then the nails in the head. I mean, just really just
Yeah.
totally different.
Very like priestly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
You know,
And I
and oddly
used
enough, they have a, and then in the third one they do that church scene. If you remember
yes,
that,
yep, yep,
pretty dark actually when you go back and you watch it.
yeah,
Yeah, if you don't, I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but you got to watch it. It's very cool. I'm not anti, church or God or anything, but just as a piece of art, for a horror movie, it was really well done.
yep. Yeah, this whole series, even even as the plot started to get a little ridiculous, like towards the latter movies, and I haven't seen like the last few, but I think I've seen
Yeah, I
probably
haven't
the
either.
first. I think I've seen the first six. I think. Um,
Yeah,
and
and
they
then I think
vary.
they did and then they did one called, I think it was Revelation maybe or something, where it was like a new actor in the suit,
Yeah,
in the costume. It wasn't even Doug Bradley,
yeah,
and I didn't even bother to watch that. I stopped maybe a movie or two before that one. I think I saw like Inferno, and there's a couple different ones in there. Doug Bradley was still the actor, but again, he had minimal screen time. As the movies went on and on, he actually was in the movie less and less.
yeah, yeah. And now
Series,
you can. I've met him a couple times at like Chiller Theater because he would do Chiller Theater like
Yeah,
every year and stuff. But yeah, good
I
stuff.
never met him.
And I think
Yeah, but you're right. The first three that we're talking about are definitely the best where you want to start off.
yeah, and that's why we're recommending everybody go. And then this Halloween season, if you can squeeze in a few hours, like on a Saturday or
Yeah.
Sunday evening or a Friday night, just pop in the first
Yep.
three, check them out. Definitely some
Yeah.
of the best horror films of the late '80s, early '90s. And
Yeah.
if you're someone who, because you talk to a lot of people who like different eras of horror films. There's some people like the old classic
Uh-huh.
stuff from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and there's some people who started watching horror films in the 70s, the 80s, and above.
Yeah.
And I think there's
Yeah.
elements of kind of both eras in these films,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
And
I agree. Like the sets and everything is very like when they not when they go to hell, but when the Cenobites show up, when they appear, it the whole tone of the film changes and it turns into almost like a Hammer film a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
with the lighting and what happens inside the rooms and things where they go, and even when they're going down the labyrinth and part two, that's all very like Hammerish, I think.
yeah, yeah. And then all the creepy sets, the atmosphere, and all the little clicking sounds and things that are going off.
Yeah.
Some serious shit's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yes.
if anybody's
Yes.
ever read any of
Exactly.
Clive Barker's books, I mean, he's just, this guy's imagination is like off the charts. I mean, his books, even like
Yeah.
the books that he's written that have nothing to do with this series or the Hellbound Heart
Right.
tale, this guy's
Yeah.
got quite the imagination.
Isn't he supposed to be doing something with Books of Blood coming up? I read about that like within the past year.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting. I mean,
I thought it was supposed to happen like a series or something.
that would be pretty cool. I mean, those stories are excellent. I
Yeah.
read those way back when those first
Yes.
came out. Yeah. Whew. Great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're watching the movies too, you got to look on the tower that spins with the body parts that are in it.
Yep.
There's a couple weird things going on there. Did you ever notice the weird things that are going on inside that tower?
God, there's a lot of
Yeah.
weird things going on in these films.
Yeah. You gotta. I caught a couple things today when I rewatched it again. I was like, oh, I didn't even see that. It's been a while, and I totally forgot about that was going on because it was all hands and feet and heads and all different
Chunks
things
of
stuck
flesh
to
and
that.
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
pretty gruesome
imagination.
stuff. And these films are not like all out gore fest by any means. I think
No.
they hold back a little bit, but there's enough unsettling stuff,
Right.
especially like in the first film where the one dude
Yeah.
is starting to get his skin back, and then the limbs are all coming in. He's got,
Yes.
and the skin hasn't grown back yet. I mean, it's some pretty
Yeah.
pretty horrific stuff there, but not as over
Yeah.
the top as we'd see later on in a lot of other films,
No.
and even some of the later Hellraiser films.
the suit that they had that they were wearing, where it's just the veins and the tendons and the arteries and things like that, is really well done. Like
It is.
really, like it's so form fitting to the body that you can't even tell that it's somebody in a suit.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's, I think, what
Yeah.
made it so horrific, is it could look so real. I mean, he literally looks
Yes.
like
Yes. It must
someone who has all his skin peeled off.
peeled off. Yes, it was so well done. No CGI, nothing like that. This is the time of you had to do everything by hand. No
Yep.
tricks in the camera.
Yep.
You know what you saw, what they filmed is what you got.
Yep. No CGI.
Yep.
No CGI. So there you have it,
Yeah.
everybody. That's our recommendation for you today here as we move our way into October, celebrating the coming
Yes.
Halloween on October 31st. So
Mhm.
go out and watch some horror films. And why don't you start this weekend with the first 3 Hellraiser films? We've got Hellraiser, Hellbound, Hellraiser II. What's the third one's full title called again?
Hell on Earth.
Hell on Earth, that's right. Yeah.
Hell on
So
Earth.
easily the
Yeah.
best in the series, and you don't want to miss them if you haven't
Yes.
seen them, or if you have seen them, now's a good time to rewatch them. So thanks everybody for joining
Agreed.
this episode of the Monsters Den here on Sea of Tranquility.
Thanks, guys.
I am Pete Pardo.
I'm Rich Catino. Thanks for having me again. And I'd like to maybe do another one before Halloween.
I think we can make that happen. We can make that happen.
Awesome.
So everybody have a
Cool.
spooktacular evening, and stay tuned for more triple feature
Make
terrors.
sure you play with your puzzle box.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.